Just over a month until the US presidential campaign begins in earnest with the first nominating contests. Last night, Republican hopefuls faced off in their final debate before next month's Iowa caucus vote. 4 candidates who qualified to take part in the debate traded barbs as they tried to improve their standing in the polls. And once again, notably absent was the frontrunner, former President Donald Trump, who polls indicate has a massive lead heading into election year. While Trump once again skipped the event, he was the focus of much of the debate.
He's the one who, as you just put it, is way ahead in the polls. And yet, I've got these 3 guys who are all seemingly to compete with, Voldemort, he who shall not be named. They don't want to talk about it. The fact is that when you go and you say the truth about somebody who is a dictator, a bully, who has taken shots at everybody, whether they've given him great service or not over time, who dares to disagree with him, then I understand why these 3 are timid to say anything about it.
Our country is in chaos. We have to stop the chaos, but you can't defeat Democrat chaos with Republican chaos. And that's what Donald Trump gives us. My approach is different. No drama, no vendettas, no whining.
DW correspondent Benjamin Alvarez Gruber in Washington can tell us more. Welcome, Benjamin. So, as we heard, Donald Trump remains the man to beat for the Republican nomination. Where do things stand for the number 2 spot after last night's debate?
There's still many questions now that need to be asked. We have 6 weeks until the Iowa caucuses that open this whole segment that we will see in next year. So the nomination contest, so time is running out for the candidates. Many are seeing Nikki Haley, who was the U.S. ambassador to the UN, and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis taking the lead. So this was the 4th debate that we saw yesterday. It happened in Alabama. It was the last big debate of the Republican hopefuls, the one to go into this presidential campaign, who want to be the Republican candidate. It was the last one of the year, but more interesting than the fact that Donald Trump, former President Donald Trump, was not part of it, is the fact that there was a segment of this 2-hour discussion that was just about him. And that's the big thing, how all of the candidates reacted to Donald Trump and what he has been saying recently. So even though he was not there, he was in a fundraiser in Florida, he was very present in the discussions and in the conversations.
Yeah, tell us more about Nikki Haley and how pundits see her chances of beating Mr. Trump.
So she has been openly criticizing the Trump administration that she was also part of as a UN ambassador. But Chris Christie, another candidate, he said that the 3 other candidates that were on stage yesterday in Alabama, and I quote, are afraid to offend Donald Trump. They spoke about that. Nikki Haley also said that there were mistakes that Donald Trump made. You could say that Nikki Haley is one of the favorites of the donors. She knows really how to move on stage. So many see her as having the biggest chance of getting this second spot. But of course, it remains to be seen how voters will decide.
Now, earlier this week, the former president raised eyebrows by suggesting that he would be a dictator from day one if he got a second term. And what's been the reaction to those comments?
That's right, and the timing of that statement was also really interesting when he said that during an interview. Joe Biden quickly reacted. So from the side of the Democrats of the White House, he said Trump's not even hiding the ball anymore. He's telling us exactly what he wants to do. He's making no bones about it. Others from the Republican side, they reacted to his statement. One of them was Senator Mitt Romney. He said he's just firing up the base and entertaining people, so that we can see a quite different approach to this that Donald Trump said about his first possible date in office if he gets a second term. But it's quite interesting because Chris Christie has been saying that the other candidates are afraid of offending Trump. I'd say rather than being afraid of offending Trump is offending his voters, because many of those candidates need to get those who would vote for Trump. We see him in the poll. He is still the front runner. There is a long distance that you can see between the front runner and other candidates. So rather than being afraid of offending Trump, what Chris Christie is saying, they might be afraid of offending his voters that they want to get to their own camp. But it's really interesting to see how Donald Trump is shaping the dialogue, is shaping the discussion, even though he's not attending these debates.
Let's talk about the war in Ukraine. We see Republican lawmakers calling their support for US aid for Kyiv. How much of a winning campaign issue is it?
It is. I mean, now we see how local politics are having international implications. Yesterday, the Senate did not pass this supplemental that the White House requested. The White House has been saying the time is running out, that these countries will need the aid. And now we're also hearing from House representatives that will probably not be able to approve it until the 15th, the 16th of December. So probably no new aid for Ukraine in this year. But this supplemental, it's not just money for Ukraine, it's also money for Israel, money for Taiwan and for the Indo-Pacific, and money for border policy. And that's the big thing where there is still discrepancies between Republicans and Democrats, because Republicans say that every national security concern should start with the border between the US and Mexico. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House of Representatives, said that Republicans in both the Senate and the House of Representatives are pretty clear about that, and that the White House and the Democrats are not recognizing that. So they will need to find a type of concessions. We will see more negotiations happening there, but it shows also how difficult it is for the US to show other allies that it will continue giving aid to Ukraine. President Biden had a talk with G7 leaders before this vote took place yesterday. And he said that it's the image that the US wants to show. And with other G7 leaders that might be wondering, if the US is not sending additional aid to Ukraine, why should we do that? So we can expect this to continue. We see how local politics are shaping. We also saw and heard President Biden acknowledging, he said that the border system is broken, that more needs to be done. But now the big question will be, who will move first? If it's the Democrats or if it's the Republicans, to get this more than $100 billion worth supplemental package, because that's what the White House said. Time is running out. It said that the Department of Defense used 97% of its funds for Ukraine, and that the State Department used all of those. So this will be indeed tricky for Ukraine. And John Kirby, the spokesperson of the National Security Council, called the fact that Congress might not pass the supplemental a Christmas gift for Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Thank you for that. DW's Benjamin Alvarez Gruber in Washington.